Commander Vex'thai had seen many species pass through the Galactic Defense Academy. Three-eyed xenocs who could calculate orbital mechanics in their sleep. Crystalline methians whose bodies could withstand temperatures that would vaporize steel. Even the dreaded Krillax warriors, whose natural armor could deflect plasma rounds. But humans? Oh, these soft, pink creatures were by far the most pathetic excuse for sentient life he'd ever encountered. "Look at them," he muttered to his assistant, Sub-Commander Krill, as they watched the latest batch of human cadets stumble through basic combat drills. Weak bone density, laughably thin skin, and they need to consume water every few hours, or they literally die. What were the Council thinking when they approved their application? The humans moved across the training ground like newborn grazers, all awkward limbs and confusion. Their instructor, a battle-scarred Thorgian named Sergeant Brutex, was demonstrating proper defensive stances. The humans attempted to copy him, but their frail bodies couldn't maintain the positions for more than 30 seconds without trembling. Vex'thai snorted. On Zephyria Prime, our younglings could hold that stance for 6 hours straight. One human in particular caught his attention. A female specimen with short auburn hair and determined green eyes. Her nameplate read Thompson. She was struggling more than the others, her face flushed red with exertion as she tried to maintain the combat position. Sweat dripped from her forehead, another sign of their species' inferior cooling system. "Watch this," Vex'thai said, activating his hover platform and descending toward the training ground. Time to give these primitive mammals a reality check. His forelegs clicked against the metallic floor as he approached the group. The humans immediately stopped their exercises and stood at attention, their breathing labored and uneven. How adorable. They couldn't even breathe properly after light exercise. "Cadets," Vex'thai announced, his voice booming across the training area. "I am Commander Vex'thai, head of Advanced Combat Studies. I've come to observe your progress." He circled them slowly, his predatory gait designed to intimidate. His species, the Kylorians, had evolved from apex hunters. Every movement was calculated to display dominance. These humans, with their forward-facing eyes and bipedal stance, were clearly evolved from some kind of tree-dwelling fruit eaters. "Sergeant Brutex informs me that you've been training for 6 standard rotations," Vex'thai continued, stopping in front of Thompson. 6 rotations, and this is the best you can manage? My grandmother's pet could perform better, and she's been dead for 2 centuries. A few of the humans shifted uncomfortably. Good. Fear was about the only thing these creatures understood. "You," he pointed one of his 4 clawed fingers at Thompson. "Step forward." The human female complied, though he could see her jaw clench slightly. Interesting. Most species showed immediate submission when confronted by a Kylorian. This one seemed to have some fight left in her, despite her obvious physical limitations. "Tell me, Thompson," he read her nameplate again, "what makes you think your species belongs in the Galactic Defense Academy? What possible contribution could humans make to our military forces?" Thompson's green eyes met his directly. Another surprise. Most prey species couldn't maintain eye contact with a predator. "With respect, sir," she said, her voice steady despite the obvious strain from the exercise, "we might not be the strongest or the fastest, but humans have qualities that—" "Qualities?" Vex'thai laughed, a sound like grinding metal that made several cadets flinch. "What qualities could possibly compensate for your glaring physical deficiencies? Your bones break if you fall too hard. Your skin tears from minor impacts. You can't see in the dark, you can't breathe underwater, and your reaction times are slower than a sedated Blorbian slug." He began circling her again, like a hunter stalking wounded prey. "Let me tell you what I see when I look at humans," he continued. "I see a species that somehow stumbled into space travel despite being completely unsuited for it. You're so fragile that you need pressurized suits just to survive in vacuum. Your home planet's gravity is so weak that you can barely function in standard galactic conditions. You're essentially walking medical emergencies waiting to happen." Thompson's hands had formed into fists at her sides. Her breathing was becoming more controlled, more focused. Vex'thai found this mildly amusing. Was the little mammal getting angry? "But please," he said with mock politeness, "enlighten me. What possible advantage does humanity bring to the table? Creativity? Every species is creative in their own way. Intelligence? The Vex'thai have intellects that make your brightest minds look like primitive calculators. Courage? The warrior clans of destruction leap into battle against impossible odds without hesitation." He leaned down, bringing his face closer to hers. His breath probably reeked of the sulphurous atmosphere of his homeworld, but he wanted to see if she would break. "So, tell me, little human, what makes you special?" Thompson was silent for a long moment. Her jaw was working, as if she was chewing on her words before speaking them. The other human cadets were watching nervously. Even Sergeant Brutek seemed uncomfortable with the direction this was taking. "We adapt," she said finally. "Adapt?" Vex'thai's laugh was even louder this time. "Every species adapts. That's basic evolution. Try again." "No," Thompson said, her voice gaining strength. "We don't just adapt to our environment. We adapt our environment to us. And when that doesn't work, we adapt ourselves." "Fascinating," Vex'thai said sarcastically. "And how exactly does this mythical adaptability help in combat situations? Are you going to adapt the plasma bolts not to hit you? Perhaps you'll adapt the vacuum of space to have breathable atmosphere." "We don't give up," Thompson said. "Ever. When every logical strategy fails, when the odds are impossible, when everyone else would surrender, humans keep fighting. We find a way, or we make one." Vex'thai was about to deliver another crushing retort when something unexpected happened. Another human cadet stepped forward. This one was male, slightly taller than Thompson, with dark hair and brown eyes. His nameplate read, "Martinez." "Commander," Martinez said, his tone respectful but firm. "Permission to speak?" "By all means," Vex'thai said, gesturing grandly with two of his arms. "Let's hear what wisdom another member of your inferior species has to offer." "You mentioned that humans are weak because we need pressurized suits in space," Martinez said. "But every species here needs environmental suits. The Methians need their crystalline atmosphere processors. The Thorgians need their temperature regulators. The Xenocs need their gravitational stabilizers. Humans aren't unique in having environmental needs." Vex'thai's eyes narrowed. "Your point?" "My point is that you're criticizing us for the same vulnerabilities that every species has, while ignoring our strengths. Yes, we're not as physically strong as a Thorgian, but we're more versatile. We can operate in a wider range of environments than most species. Our immune systems can adapt to new pathogens. Our psychology allows us to form alliances across species barriers." "Pretty words," Vex'thai snarled, "but this is a military academy, not a diplomatic corps. In combat, your versatility means nothing if you're dead in the first 30 seconds. "That's assuming we'd fight the same way you do," said another human voice. This one belonged to a female cadet with blonde hair. Her nameplate read, "Foster." Vex'thai turned his attention to her. "Oh, please, enlighten me about human military tactics." Foster stepped forward to join Thompson and Martinez. "Humans don't fight fair," she said simply. "We use tools, we use terrain, we use psychology. We turn our weaknesses into strengths, and our enemies' strengths into weaknesses." "Impossible," Vex'thai scoffed. "Strength is strength. Weakness is weakness. You cannot simply reverse the laws of physics." "Can't we?" Foster smiled, and there was something unsettling about that expression. "Commander, what do you know about human military history?" "I know that your species has spent most of its existence fighting itself," Vex'thai replied. "Hardly impressive when you consider that you're all equally pathetic." "True," Foster nodded, "but think about what that means. For thousands of years, humans have been refining the art of warfare against opponents who think exactly like we do. Every strategy, every tactic, every trick we've developed has been tested against minds that could predict and counter our moves. We've had to become incredibly creative just to survive each other." Vex'thai was about to dismiss this when Martinez spoke up again. "Commander, have you ever heard of the Battle of Thermopylae?" "No," Vex'thai said impatiently. "Nor do I care about some primitive skirmish from your pre-space era." 300 Spartan warriors held off an army of over 100,000 Persians for 3 days, Martinez said. They used terrain, strategy, and sheer determination to accomplish what should have been impossible. "Myths and legends," Vex'thai waved dismissively. "Probably exaggerated by your historians." "Or the Winter War," Thompson added, her voice gaining confidence. "Finland against the Soviet Union, outnumbered over 3-1, facing superior equipment and resources. But the Finns knew their terrain, used guerrilla tactics, and refused to surrender. They held out for months." "Or Vietnam," Foster continued, "or Afghanistan. Over and over throughout our history, smaller, weaker forces have defeated larger, stronger ones through determination, creativity, and refusing to quit." Vex'thai felt a flicker of annoyance. These humans were supposed to be cowering in submission by now, not giving him history lessons. "Ancient history," he said coldly. "This is modern warfare we're talking about. Energy weapons, orbital bombardment, fleet actions. Your primitive tactics are irrelevant." "Are they?" Thompson asked. "Commander, what's the first rule of military strategy?" Vex'thai's 4 eyes glared at her. "Know your enemy." "Exactly," Thompson nodded. "And what do you know about humans as enemies?" "That you're weak, fragile, and—" "That we're unpredictable," Thompson interrupted. "That we don't follow standard tactical doctrine. That we're willing to take casualties that other species would consider unacceptable. That we see every setback as a learning opportunity rather than a reason to retreat." The training ground had grown very quiet. Even Sergeant Brutex was listening intently now. "You want to know what makes humans dangerous?" Martinez asked. "It's not our strength or our speed or our natural weapons. It's that we never stop learning. Every defeat teaches us something new. Every victory shows us what works. And we remember. We pass that knowledge down through generations. And we share it," Foster added. "Humans don't just learn from our own mistakes. We learn from everyone's mistakes. We study every conflict, analyze every strategy, absorb every lesson. By the time we fight you, we already know how you think." Vex'thai was growing genuinely irritated now. These mammals were supposed to be intimidated, not lecturing him about military theory. "Enough," he snapped. "Your academic theories are meaningless in actual combat. When the shooting starts, all that matters is who can hit harder and take more damage. And in that equation, humans lose every time." "Do we?" Thompson asked, and her smile was becoming more pronounced. "Commander, would you like to test that theory?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Vex'thai could feel the attention of every cadet, every instructor, every observer focusing on this moment. His pride as a Kylorian warrior was at stake. More than that, his reputation as an intimidating authority figure was on the line. "What exactly are you proposing?" he asked slowly. "A demonstration," Thompson said. "You versus me, hand-to-hand combat. No weapons, no equipment, just natural abilities. If I lose, I'll publicly admit that humans are inferior and request a transfer to a non-combat role." "And if you win?" Vex'thai asked, though the very idea was laughable. A human defeating a Kylorian in physical combat was like a butterfly defeating a steel hawk. "If I win," Thompson said, "you acknowledge that humans might have some value in the Galactic Defense Forces after all." Vex'thai looked around the training ground. Every eye was on him. To refuse would make him look weak, afraid of a mere human. To accept would give him the opportunity to definitively prove his point about human inferiority. It was perfect. "Very well," he said, beginning to remove his ceremonial armor. "But when I'm done with you, you'll spend the next month in medical recovery, thinking about the foolishness of challenging your betters." Thompson began removing her training jacket, revealing the standard-issue workout clothing underneath. She looked even more fragile without the padding, all lean muscle and visible bone structure. Vex'thai outweighed her by at least 3-1, and his natural armor plating would protect him from any damage her weak punches might inflict. "Sergeant Brutex," Vex'thai called out, "you'll serve as referee. Standard Academy rules for combat demonstrations. First to achieve submission or unconsciousness wins." "Sir," Brutex replied, though he looked uncomfortable. "Are you certain this is advisable? The liability issues alone?" "I'll take full responsibility," Vex'thai said. "Begin when ready." Thompson rolled her shoulders and stretched her neck, loosening up her joints. She looked calm, almost relaxed. Clearly, the reality of what she was about to face hadn't sunk in yet. "Ready when you are, Commander," she said. Vex'thai dropped into his species' traditional combat stance. 4 legs spread for maximum stability, clawed hands ready to strike, head lowered to protect his throat. He looked like what he was, a predator preparing to destroy its prey. Thompson's stance was completely different. She stood sideways, 1 foot forward, hands raised but loose. It looked almost casual, like she was preparing for a friendly sparring match rather than a serious fight. "Begin!" Sergeant Brutex called out reluctantly. Vex'thai lunged forward with all 4 limbs, intending to end this quickly and decisively. His claws extended, his weight behind the charge, enough force to send a human flying across the training ground. But Thompson wasn't there anymore. She had stepped aside at the last possible second, moving with a fluid grace that seemed to defy her species' supposed clumsiness. Vex'thai's claws scraped harmlessly across empty air as his momentum carried him past her. Before he could recover, something struck him hard in the side of his head. Thompson's elbow. The blow wasn't particularly powerful by Kylorian standards, but it landed in exactly the right spot to rattle his inner ear and disrupt his balance. Vex'thai staggered, his 4 legs suddenly unsteady beneath him. "What the—" he began, but Thompson was already moving again. This time she grabbed one of his rear legs, planted her foot against his hip, and twisted. The leverage was perfect, using his own weight and momentum against him. Vex'thai found himself flipping through the air, his natural grace abandoned as he crashed to the training ground floor. He rolled quickly to his feet, snarling with rage and embarrassment. The human had gotten lucky. That was all. He wouldn't make the same mistake twice. Cute trick, he growled. Let's see how you handle a real attack. This time he approached more carefully, keeping his guard up, watching for any sudden movements. Thompson circled him slowly, her eyes never leaving his center mass. She looked like she was thinking, calculating, planning her next move. Vex'thai feinted with his left hand, then struck with his right. The blow should have connected solidly with Thompson's ribs, but somehow she rolled with the impact, turning what should have been a devastating hit into a glancing blow that barely staggered her. And then she did something that completely violated every principle of combat Vex'thai had ever learned. Instead of retreating or countering, she stepped closer, right into his reach, where his size and strength advantages should have been overwhelming. Her hands found his wrist, twisted it at an angle that sent shooting pain up his arm, and suddenly Vex'thai found himself being thrown again. This time he landed harder, and Thompson didn't give him time to recover. She was on him immediately, her knee pressing into his throat, her hands controlling his arms. The position looked impossible. She was half his size and a fraction of his weight, but somehow she had him completely immobilized. "Yield," she said quietly. Vex'thai's vision was starting to blur from the pressure on his throat. His forearms strained against her grip, but every movement only made her hold tighter. The laws of physics said this shouldn't be possible. His strength should have easily overpowered hers, but physics, he was beginning to realize, was only part of the equation. "Yield," Thompson repeated, and there was no mockery in her voice, no triumph, just professional competence. "I dot." Vex'thai tried to speak, but couldn't get enough air. His pride warred with his survival instinct, and survival won. "I yield." Thompson released him immediately and stepped back, offering him a hand up. Vex'thai stared at it for a moment, his mind still trying to process what had just happened. He had been defeated by a human, in single combat, in front of half the academy. The training ground was completely silent. Vex'thai took Thompson's offered hand, his pride burning like acid in his throat. As she helped him to his feet, he could feel the weight of every stare, every shocked expression, every whispered comment from the assembled crowd. Word would spread through the academy within the hour. The mighty commander Vex'thai, apex predator of Zephyria Prime, had been humiliated by a fragile human female. "How?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Thompson dusted off her hands and looked him directly in the eye. "Leverage, timing, and about 12 years of martial arts training. You telegraphed every move, kept your weight too far forward, and assumed that bigger automatically means better." "Impossible," Vex'thai muttered. "The strength differential alone should have—" "Strength doesn't matter if you can't apply it effectively," Martinez interrupted, stepping forward with the other human cadets. "That's what we've been trying to tell you. Humans learned a long time ago that we can't win fights through raw power. So we developed fighting systems based on technique, leverage, and exploiting our opponent's weaknesses." Foster nodded enthusiastically. "Every human learns basic self-defense, not because we're violent, but because we had to survive on a planet where almost everything was bigger and stronger than us. Predators, natural disasters, hostile environments. We adapted by learning to fight smarter, not harder." Vex'thai's mind reeled. His entire worldview was crashing down around him like a collapsing building. Everything he thought he knew about combat effectiveness, about species hierarchy, about the natural order of things, had just been shattered by a single demonstration. "But your anatomy," he said weakly. your bone density, your muscle mass are perfectly adequate for our fighting style," Thompson replied. "Commander, you fought like a Kylorian because that's what you are. Powerful, direct, overwhelming force. But I fought like a human. I used your strength against you, found the weak points in your defense, and applied pressure where it would be most effective." Sub-Commander Krill, who had been watching from the observation deck, came scuttling down on his 8 spindly legs. His compound eyes were wide with disbelief, and his usual confident bearing had evaporated entirely. "Commander," he said nervously, "the Academy Board has been monitoring the training session. They want to see you immediately." Vex'thai felt his heart sink. The board consisted of representatives from all the major galactic defense species. They would have witnessed his defeat, analyzed its implications, and probably already begun drafting his replacement orders. "I'll be there, shortly," he said, then turned back to Thompson. "This isn't over." Thompson raised an eyebrow. "Sir?" "I mean," Vex'thai said quickly, realizing how that sounded, "my evaluation of human combat potential isn't finished. I need to understand how you did what you just did. If humans truly possess capabilities that I've overlooked, it's my duty to assess them properly." The truth was, Vex'thai's scientific curiosity had been awakened alongside his wounded pride. In 30 years of military service, he had never encountered anything like what he'd just experienced. Thompson hadn't just defeated him through luck or a single clever technique. She had completely outclassed him tactically, turning his every advantage into a liability. "Of course, sir," Thompson said diplomatically. "We're here to learn, and we're happy to share what we know about human combat doctrine." As the crowd of cadets and instructors began to disperse, buzzing with excited conversation, Sergeant Brutex approached the group. The massive Thorgian looked troubled, his rocky features creased with concern. "Commander," he said quietly, "I've been training humans for 6 rotations now. What Thompson just demonstrated isn't unusual for her species. They all fight like that. Unpredictable, adaptive, completely contrary to standard tactical doctrine." "What do you mean?" Vex'thai asked. "Watch," Brutex said, then called out to the remaining human cadets. "Combat demonstration. Martinez and Foster, show the commander your sparring techniques." The 2 humans moved to the center of the training ground and bowed formally to each other. Then they began to fight, and Vex'thai's confusion deepened with every exchange. Neither human was trying to overpower the other. Instead, they moved like dancers, flowing around each other's attacks, redirecting force rather than meeting it head-on. When Martinez threw a punch, Foster didn't block it. She redirected it past her body and used his momentum to throw him. When Foster attempted a kick, Martinez caught her leg and turned it into a takedown that she somehow escaped from with a roll that brought her back to her feet. "They're not fighting to win," Vex'thai realized. "They're problem-solving in real time." "Exactly," Brutex nodded. "Every exchange teaches them something new about their opponent's capabilities and limitations. They adapt their strategy continuously throughout the fight. It's unlike anything I've ever seen." The sparring match ended with both humans laughing and complimenting each other on particularly clever techniques. There was no shame in defeat, no anger at being outmaneuvered. They treated combat like a collaborative learning experience rather than a dominance contest. "How do you prepare for an enemy like that?" Vex'thai asked, more to himself than to anyone else. "You don't," Thompson said, having overheard. "That's the point. Human military doctrine is built around the assumption that our enemies will be stronger, better equipped, and more numerous than we are. So we focus on being unpredictable, adaptive, and persistent. We learn from every encounter and share that knowledge with everyone else. But surely there are limits to this adaptability, Vex'thai protested. What happens when humans face an enemy they can't outthink or outmaneuver? Martinez and Foster exchanged a look that made Vex'thai suddenly uncomfortable. Then we get creative, Martinez said simply. Creative how? Foster grinned, and that expression was becoming disturbingly familiar. Commander, have you ever heard of the concept of mutually assured destruction? No. It's a human military strategy from our pre-space era, Foster explained. The basic idea is that if your enemy can destroy you, you make sure you can destroy them too. Even if you lose, they lose as well. It's a deterrent strategy based on the principle that nobody wants to win a fight if the cost is their own annihilation. Vex'thai's four eyes widened in horror. That's insane. No rational species would ever implement such a strategy. Humans did, Thompson said quietly. For about 50 years, our entire planet lived under the threat of complete nuclear annihilation. Any major conflict could have ended civilization as we knew it. But it worked. The fear of mutual destruction prevented any large-scale wars during that period. But the risk was acceptable to us, Martinez finished, because the alternative was surrender or subjugation. Humans would rather die fighting than live in chains. It's not rational by most species' standards, but it's who we are. Vex'thai felt a chill run down his spine. He was beginning to understand why the Galactic Council had been so interested in recruiting humans, despite their obvious physical limitations. A species willing to implement mutually assured destruction wasn't just unpredictable, they were genuinely dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with individual combat prowess. "There's something else you should know," Thompson said, her tone becoming more serious. "What you saw today, my defeating you in single combat. That's not unusual by human standards. Every human in this academy could probably do the same thing, given the right circumstances." "Impossible," Vex'thai said automatically, but his certainty was cracking. "We all train together," Foster explained. "We share techniques, teach each other, constantly improve our collective capabilities. When one human learns something new, we all learn it. When one of us develops a counter to a particular fighting style, that knowledge spreads throughout our entire military. And it's not just combat," Martinez added. "It's everything. Engineering, tactics, logistics, intelligence gathering. Humans have developed what we call distributed learning. Every individual contributes to the collective knowledge base, and everyone benefits from everyone else's experiences." Vex'thai's communicator chimed urgently. The Academy Board was growing impatient. He would have to face them soon and explain how a single human cadet had completely destroyed his credibility as a military instructor. "I have to go," he said reluctantly. "But this conversation isn't finished. I need to understand more about human capabilities and how they might integrate with existing galactic defense doctrine." "Of course, sir," Thompson said. "We're always happy to educate our instructors." There was no mockery in her tone, but Vex'thai caught the subtle irony anyway. The students teaching the teacher. His world had indeed been turned upside down. As he walked toward the Academy Administration Building, Vex'thai found himself reassessing everything he thought he knew about military effectiveness. Strength, speed, and durability were certainly important factors in combat. But humans had demonstrated something else entirely: the ability to turn those very advantages against their opponents. The board meeting was as uncomfortable as he'd expected. Representatives from 7 different species sat around a circular table, their various anatomies creating a bizarre collection of shapes, sizes, and textures. At the head of the table, the ethereal Admiral Vex'thai floated in a containment field, her gaseous form shifting colors as she spoke. "Commander Vex'thai," she said, her voice harmonizing with itself in ways that always made his skin crawl. "We observed your training demonstration with considerable interest." "Admiral," Vex'thai began, "I can explain—" "No explanation is necessary," interrupted General Thockmore, the Brutatian representative whose rock-like hide made him look like a mobile mountain. "What we witnessed was precisely what we hoped to see." Vex'thai blinked in confusion. "Sir?" "The Human Integration Program has been under evaluation for 2 standard years," Vex'thai continued. "Various species have questioned whether humans possess the necessary capabilities for military service. Your demonstration today provided definitive proof of their combat effectiveness." "I was defeated," Vex'thai said, still not understanding, humiliated. "My credibility as an instructor has been compromised." "Your credibility as a Kylorian supremacist has been compromised," corrected Counselor Vex'thai, the quantum representative whose form existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "Your value as a military analyst has been enhanced considerably." Admiral Vex'thai's gaseous form shifted to a pleased blue-green pattern. "Commander, you have just experienced firsthand what our intelligence reports have been suggesting for months. Humans represent a completely new paradigm in military thinking. They don't fight according to established patterns or traditional doctrine. They improvise, adapt, and overcome through methods that most species would never consider." General Thockmore leaned forward, his massive frame creaking like shifting stone. "Tell us, Commander, what did you learn from your encounter with Cadet Thompson?" Vex'thai thought carefully before answering. His pride was still wounded, but his analytical mind was beginning to process the implications of what he'd experienced. "Humans don't rely on natural advantages," he said slowly. "They've developed artificial advantages through training, technique, and tactical innovation. They turn their opponent's strengths into weaknesses through superior positioning, timing, and leverage application." "Continue," Vex'thai encouraged. "They're unpredictable because they don't follow standard combat doctrine. Every engagement is treated as a learning opportunity rather than a simple dominance contest. They share knowledge collectively, which means that defeating one human doesn't guarantee success against the next one." "And what are the strategic implications?" asked Vex'thai. Vex'thai considered this. "An enemy might develop effective counters to human tactics, but those counters would only work until the humans adapted. And they would adapt quickly because they treat every defeat as educational data rather than a failure to be ashamed of." "Precisely," Thockmore rumbled approvingly. "Humans are the first species we've encountered that views warfare as an iterative learning process rather than a demonstration of innate superiority." Vex'thai's form shifted to an excited yellow pattern. "Commander, we have a new assignment for you. You will develop an integrated training program that combines human adaptive tactics with traditional galactic defense doctrine. The humans will teach our existing forces their methods, while learning our conventional approaches." "But Admiral," Vex'thai protested, "I was just defeated by one of their cadets. How can I possibly instruct them in anything?" "Because," Vex'thai said, with what might have been amusement, "you now understand that instruction is a bidirectional process. Teachers learn from students, students teach each other, and everyone benefits from the exchange of knowledge." As Vex'thai left the board meeting, his head spinning with new responsibilities and paradigm shifts, he realized that the humans had already begun changing the Galactic Defense Academy in ways that went far beyond simple military training. They had introduced the concept that knowledge was more valuable than strength, that adaptability trumped rigid doctrine, and that defeat could be more educational than victory. Walking back toward the training grounds, Vex'thai found Thompson and her fellow human cadets engaged in what appeared to be a technical discussion about leverage points and joint manipulation. When they saw him approaching, they stood at attention. "At ease," he said, then paused. "Actually, disregard that order. I think it's time we dispensed with traditional hierarchical protocols." Thompson raised an eyebrow. "Sir? From now on, this will be a collaborative learning environment," Vex'thai announced. "You'll teach us your methods, we'll share our knowledge with you, and together we'll develop new approaches to military effectiveness that neither of our species could achieve alone." The humans exchanged glances. Then Thompson stepped forward. "Commander, that sounds like the beginning of a very interesting partnership." Vex'thai looked at her extended hand for a moment, then took it in his own clawed grip. The handshake was firm, respectful, and somehow symbolic of something much larger than personal reconciliation. "Indeed," he said, "I have a feeling that the galaxy is about to become a much more interesting place." And as he watched the human cadets begin demonstrating their techniques to a gathering crowd of alien instructors and students, Vex'thai realized that Thompson had been absolutely right about one thing. Humans never gave up. They just found new ways to win.